How do we look at Georgia, regardless of the outcome of the Alabama game, and say they are not one of the best four teams in college football? That was Kirk Herbstreit tonight talking to, well, probably straight to the committee on ESPN's College Football Playoff Reveal. Dean Legge and Ryan Curley. This is actually you and I immediately texted about this and what Greg McElroy had to say. I think what Greg said was well, I think they're both right, although they were. I can't wait for you to scream at me about, let me finish. Did you see that part? I get it. Kirk was on a delay. Hey, listen, let's start with the Georgia thing and get in what Greg said. Kirk said, I think Georgia's the best team in the country. How do you look at Georgia? Regardless of the outcome of the Alabama game, they're at 8, man. I wouldn't and say they are not one of the best four teams.
I mean, where do you put Alabama?
Listen, I think the outlier here in the
You
grand
can't
scheme,
really have them over Texas. I mean, it's hard to do that.
well, that gets back to Greg's global
But
point. But go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
go ahead. Go ahead. Where would you put it? Where would you put them at
Just
8? I guess. Why is Florida State at 4?
I like I I feel like I've said the same thing about Florida State every week, and I don't think this is one of the four best teams in college football. I get that the Seminoles are undefeated, but my eyes tell me that they're not one of the four best teams in college football. They haven't dominated throughout the year. No one has just dominated the entire schedule, really, but Florida State hasn't looked as good as, I don't know, the 4 or 5 teams behind them.
Here's what I would be worried about if I were the Florida State Seminoles. I would be worried about Alabama beating Georgia because I don't think Georgia's going to get knocked out of the top 4. Okay? I'm just going to say that right now.
Let's talk
First of
about
all,
that because it's. I don't get why that
I've been
group of
saying that for
people
like
on
2 weeks
TV.
now. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off, but uh, I don't. The TV people didn't really, Kirk and Reese and all them. They didn't really talk about that scenario as much as I would have liked.
No,
If
because
Alabama beats Georgia, no one's talking about that scenario and what that means. It's just what happens if Georgia wins. It's not where do you put Alabama? Does Georgia fall out? I feel like
I
that
don't think they're going
just that discussion didn't happen really.
to. So follow me down this rabbit hole because first of all, I got Georgia and I got them against the spread. So I mean, I think they cover. That's where I'm at with this whole thing. But I mean, we'll just have to see. I just deleted the college football playoff committee's email just because I saw the show. I don't need to recap it. So let me go to my trash real fast here, Ryan. The
Probably pull it up.
huh?
I mean, I can pull it up. What are you looking for?
Well, you're sitting there with your 1 through 6. All of those teams can still get in. Excuse me, your 1 through 5. All those Ohio State's not moving above everybody else. Okay, so that's one problem. So your 1 through 5, essentially you win and there's nothing to discuss. Even Florida State. I mean, what I think will happen, Ryan, is Georgia will beat Alabama. I suspect Florida State will win against Louisville, but we'll see. I think Oregon will beat Washington, and I think Michigan is going to trounce Iowa. Iowa is horrific. They're really bad. They're just not good. And I think that's what the playoff is going to be. It's going to be the only one-loss conference champion that has a top 5 win, basically, which is going to be Oregon. Texas, Alabama are going to be left out in the cold. However, let's say Georgia loses. They dropped Ohio State out. Ohio State doesn't have what Georgia's got in terms of victories. This is flashing lights that they will drop Florida State to keep Georgia in, put Bama at 3. It would go Michigan, the winner of the Pac-12, Bama at 3, and then Georgia at 4. They are not gonna put Ohio State in over Georgia. We know that. The notion that they would put Texas in, I just don't suspect that will happen.
Yeah,
I think that the committee
it'd
will
be tough
say,
to justify it. Yeah.
yeah, what Greg McElroy, who is quite smart, was exactly correct in saying, and I'll let you go on your tirade, is they're not going to put the best 4 in. They're going to put the 4 in that they can explain. Now that might not be so good for Georgia if they lose. I don't think they will. That might not be so good, but I just think there will be a total not having the Dogs in because I don't know if Alabama gets in if they win right now.
Well, but you just threw out the scenario that Bama would be the 3 and Georgia would be the 4 if Alabama
I
beats
think that's
Georgia.
what should happen. I think
That's
that's
what you
what
think should
will.
happen, not what would happen. That's what
I
I'm
think it
saying.
probably
I
would happen.
I really don't know. I don't know what
Well,
they do with that. That I think is the committee's worst nightmare is Alabama beating Georgia.
there's a lot of nightmares here,
Yeah,
frankly.
it's awesome.
Well, I
It
don't
also
think it
sucks.
is.
It
I
also
think it's
sucks.
bad for the sport,
That's
and
why this
because
is going to 12. It'll be
going to 12 is
better.
great, but tell that to Jalen Milrow or whoever. I don't even know.
Whoever's playing their last year of college
Yeah,
football.
whoever's playing their final season of college football, whoever that person may be, make sure you're taking advantage of this offer we've got. The link is right down below. Our friends at EcoPoly have been great, but I do want to make sure that y'all are taking advantage of this. Stetson Bennett signed Double Dawgs. I do not have 15 of these anymore. Actually, I think I just saw a sale, so I have fewer than 15. So get it, take advantage of this. These are not lasting. So there you go. It's a great Christmas gift. I send them out immediately. Take advantage of it now. What do you make of what Greg had to say? The link is down below. I mean, I think Greg's right.
He is
It's never
right.
the top
He's
four.
right. In a scenario like this, where there's going to be more than 4 teams that have a real argument to make it, the committee is probably going to lean towards just whichever scenario has the least amount of people coming at them. That would be my guess. Now,
I think leaving Georgia
now
out would.
leaving Georgia out might not be the best way to do that,
I know.
right?
Yeah,
Because
you're going to have everybody at
yeah,
ESPN
yeah, everyone. Because
who
what did
is.
they all just say?
Yeah.
They all just said they didn't know how. Yeah, they didn't know how you keep Georgia out. If even if it was
I
Alabama.
don't know.
Now, if
I don't know how you
Alabama,
keep. Listen, if
Alabama,
Michigan.
what if Alabama beats the crap out of Georgia?
Well, that's different.
That's different. And I think it'd be hard to keep Georgia in after that.
Well, it's everything's about in heavyweight boxing, you don't know what you don't know until you watch them fight, right? I mean, this is the same thing. If Michigan loses to Iowa, they're
They're,
going to the playoff. Right? It doesn't matter. They're in.
oh,
It's
you
just.
think Michigan's in?
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what will happen. I think.
Um, I
Go
don't
ahead.
know if it's as much of a certainty as Georgia.
Well, Michigan's not got what Georgia's got.
Yeah, but losing to Iowa is different than losing to Alabama.
Well, that is very true, actually. But when you look at the Dogs, they have 2 top 11 wins. The only other team that has that is Michigan, if my math is right. I think Michigan might have one more. Let me get to my deleted email here. Yeah, Michigan and Georgia both are the only teams with 2 top 11 wins. I don't think anyone else can get that. The Noles can have 2 top 14 wins. That's not the same. I would argue. Georgia has 3 top 20s, top 21s, and I'm not going to do the math for everybody, but it's not looking like a lot of people have that either. Oregon doesn't have a defining win. I think their best win, from what I recall, is Oregon State, and that's it. So what it is, Brian, the rules of the committee, as I understand it, are you establish who the best 4 teams are. And when you cannot establish that, then you start going to this other stuff. For me, this is simple for 2 of the spots, actually 3 of them. Georgia, Michigan, the winner of the Pac-12. Those 3, in my opinion, there is no confusion. There's nothing to discuss. Those 3 are, in my mind, clearly the best 3 in the country. I would almost argue that it's just Georgia, Michigan, and Oregon, but I will allow the Pac-12 argument. After that, I think it gets quite dicey.
Yeah, I don't think
Quite dicey.
Unless there's just a situation where you can't keep Michigan out, I think you can justify dropping them 3 spots
To 4?
by losing Iowa.
Oh, to 5.
To 5.
I mean, okay.
I think you can justify dropping them 3 spots if they lose to Iowa.
Okay, I you know what?
It's easier to justify that than if Georgia loses to Alabama.
I'm not gonna have that. I'm not gonna dispute that.
Yeah.
Okay, you are correct on that.
So here's another thing, and it's with last year too. It kind of applied. Who did we think was a better team between TCU and Ohio State heading into the playoff?
Yes, exactly. Very good point.
Okay.
Well, we should say
Georgia very well could end up playing Florida State in this thing.
Oh, Georgia. So
or
let me lie.
No, wait for this. say it's Oregon that beats
Well, we need
Washington.
to answer the question that you asked a second ago, so there's no confusion. We very much thought Ohio State was the better team
Yes,
for
yes,
sure. So what, and that's A. Now
yes,
B, this could really be a great scenario for Georgia. Go ahead.
yes. Or it could be another bad one.
I
Because
don't think
here's what I'm going to
I
say.
don't think that's going to happen.
Because then Oregon would have the marquee win. It would have beaten everyone it's played, and everyone is watching, saying that Oregon is a better team than Florida State.
They are.
And the committee. So is the committee just going to? I mean, they're not. They're going to put Oregon at 3.
They will put Oregon at 3. That's what will happen. I mean, it's too big of a game. There will be. I mean, this shouldn't matter, but it will. There will be inherent pressure from the Rose Bowl to have a Big Ten Pac-12. Go ahead.
But my point is, what if they don't? I mean, because last year, I mean, it was a little bit more justifiable last year to have TCU at 3, but they had both been coming off of a loss.
Neither of them won their league.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
so different than the way it might play out this year.
Right. Neither of them won their league, but the problem with a lot of this conjecture right now, well, so a couple of things from my perspective at least, is that the College Football Playoff Committee this year has been far more rational than it's been in the past. I will give them that. I don't know that I necessarily agreed with them having Ohio State at 1. They were at 1 at the beginning of the thing. But they corrected that after Georgia beat whoever's brains in. And it was, so they have made adjustments and gotten the right way. Go ahead.
I just, I found it so funny. Was that the leader, the guy, the commissioner of the
Lou Kerrigan from NC
not
State?
The commissioner, yeah.
Whatever.
Just the way that he fumbled through justifying Florida's ranking.
Florida State?
Yeah. Florida State's ranking. He couldn't get a real sentence there, just talking about how Rodemaker managed the game. Oh, Trey Benson had 3 touchdowns. That's why? That was your justification for their ranking?
Yeah, I can't.
Box score watchers.
I cannot.
I just hope that's not the case.
I don't think there is justification. I mean, nobody who's watched Florida State this season can really make the argument to me that they're better than Oregon, but yet they're ranked higher. Now, if you want to make the argument that they're better than Washington, I'll listen to it. But I think what will
are they better? I mean, does anyone think Florida State's better than Alabama?
I was just going to say that. I do not.
And they're ranked number 8.
Hey, look, you know what, Ryan? I don't want to give Alabama too much credit. Now,
yes. And that was the point of my story yesterday, too.
Yeah, and I think it was a well-written story over at Dawg Post. I don't have a link down below, but y'all should be going to Dawg Post and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get it in your inbox.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. When you were scrambling for the rankings, I was looking at it on Dawg Post. Yeah,
it is on Dawg Post actually. But Alabama has not. There have been moments in several games where Alabama has not made a great representation of itself. I mean, and I will go back to the beginning of the season. I mean, people want to talk about Georgia's game with Auburn. And this off the top of my head, obviously the loss to Texas, and a week later against South Florida, the Arkansas game, to some degree the Tennessee game, the Texas A&M game, the Auburn game. I mean, that's half the season. So at that point, we were talking about how many night games Georgia had played. They played in 5 night games this year, Ryan. Enough for some of us.
I'm tired.
Yeah, too many
I'm
night
tired.
games.
Can't we get home at 4 a.m.?
And get ready. Listen, if they win on Saturday, guess what? You're playing another night game in New Orleans. So, and I mean a night game, 8:30 Eastern. I wouldn't want a 7:30 a.m. flight out the next morning. Is that not funny to you?
Is it funny to you?
It's just what it is, man.
It's gonna suck.
It's just what it is. I mean,
If that's what ends up happening, that's gonna suck.
I think that's what's gonna happen. But I think I have to listen. Georgia is a 6-point favorite over Alabama. That is not nothing. That line has climbed. I will double check where we're at with that and let you talk about what you think will happen. I mean, listen, where is Texas in all of that? In all of this?
I know.
What about Texas?
They're they don't control their own destiny.
at
It's just,
all.
and yeah, if you're Texas, you're in a terrible position as a possible 12-1 conference champion, and it's not often that gets left out of the playoff.
Mark
I mean,
Cuban is selling the Mavericks for $3.5 billion.
I saw that, and I
If you
saw that
want,
he's not doing Shark Tank anymore soon.
I don't know about that
He's
part.
just all over the headlines today.
Oh, Mark Cuban's been a business guy for some time now. Three
Yeah.
point five billion. Um,
No, but Texas,
it
they
is.
didn't play well enough this year,
No, they
man.
haven't.
They just didn't play well. You had the real high there in week 2.
But we
You get
watched the next
throttled to
week.
being a top 4 team, and then
But you and I, after the South Carolina game, or Matt and I can't remember who it was. We're in the dungeon down, in the Dawg Post headquarters. We're watching them nearly lose to Wyoming, or at least go down.
yeah, that was that was
what is
me.
going on right now?
Yeah, you can't be Wyoming in the second half. And you put up like 20 in the fourth quarter, but it shouldn't take that long to
No.
get things rolling
And,
against
and
Wyoming.
to be fair, Wyoming is really not that bad, I have to say.
Yeah.
But what in the world are we talking about right now? That we're so. I think the committee's got it right, to be honest with you. So now the line's dropped back down to
You know,
5.5. But
I
so
got
you get my
I got an
point.
interesting point. Whose loss is worse between Texas and Alabama?
Well,
Getting
I
beat
would
by
say
14
Texas
at
is.
home at night
What's
in
that now?
Tuscaloosa. Getting beat by 2 touchdowns at home at night. I mean, that's not great, man.
Well, it
To a
was 10.
to a team that we've, as the years gone on, deemed not as great as we thought.
Texas talking about.
Yes.
So they lost by 10, did they not?
It was 34-20 or something. Or maybe it was 10, but it was double
I
digits
think it might have
regardless.
been 10. Clearly the loss at home is
Yeah, it was
worse than
10.
a neutral site loss. Okay, on the last play of the game. I mean, if you want to talk to me about Texas and they should probably be undefeated, stuff like that. I mean, maybe they should be. I mean, maybe they should be 10-2 with the loss to Kansas State in overtime, or pick a game. I mean, they've had several games that have just been. I don't
I mean,
know.
Texas would be ranked 3 or 4 right now if
The
they
Horns.
didn't lose that game to Oklahoma. Yeah.
They should have never lost that game. They clearly were the better team. Oklahoma is not as good as Texas, which is saying something, but
Yeah.
still.
So that is that part of it is, it is probably a little bit good for college football that one little, I mean, just that close to the playoff. If we look back on it, that'll be the difference between Texas going to the playoff and not is right there at the end of that Oklahoma game.
Yeah, or the win over.
The stakes being so high is something I've loved about college football so much. That's why I've been cool with the 4
but
teams.
are you about to
But
go?
the sport, I think across the board, it is going to even out more with all these changes. And so this is the right time to do this.
I'm talking about going to 12.
Yeah.
Well, your top is still your top, though. I mean, it's.
Yeah, another point too that I just remembered with Kirk talking about how bad some of these semifinal games have been.
Right.
That's what's going to happen if Georgia plays Florida State.
If they play
honestly, most teams. Some of these teams up here at the top.
Florida State is not the number 3 team in the country. I'm not sure they're number 4. So they would be at a. They don't travel. I've been to a Sugar Bowl with Georgia and Florida State. I've been to other games with Florida State. They don't have the same fan base. They are a smaller school in terms of fan base. They're not as big as the Gators. They're bigger than Miami, which is saying nothing. But Georgia would have a huge crowd in New Orleans for that game. The team who's going to have the biggest crowd at all of these games is, if they go there, is Michigan. That's it. I mean, they just will. And Georgia hung in there with Ohio State last year, probably having 60-ish% of the crowd, but in Atlanta. But that's really saying something about Ohio State. So I think Georgia would have a very significant home field advantage, so to speak, in New Orleans. Whatever happens in Houston, they better hope they're not playing Michigan, because it won't be a road game. But it will be something like Georgia Tech, this past weekend, where it's not obvious who the home team is. But anyway, that's further down the line. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Dean and Ryan signing off.